I always thought that bay leaves were like those things you just threw in a recipe because they said you should, and it adds like a little bit of flavor, but if you didn't add it in, you really didn't know. But no, this has an amazing flavor. Hey everyone, welcome back to Chef Tyler's Croatian Kitchen. Now with the fall settling in and the temperatures dropping, I thought maybe we could move to more homey, warm meals. So today I've got for you pileći paprikaš, or a chicken stew. This is something my mom would always make as a kid, and it would be the perfect thing to come home on a cold fall day and have a nice pot of chicken stew waiting for you. Pileći paprikaš is one of those dishes that has many varieties throughout the country, and the one I'm going to go with is from Dalmatia, which is the coast, and probably the part of Croatia that you have heard of. It's where my family comes from, and that's where, of course, this recipe comes from as well. The ingredients are very simple, as is with most Croatian recipes. We have chicken. I'm going with chicken drumstick and thigh together, but you could go with them cut up individually. You can go all chicken thigh or all chicken drumsticks, whatever floats your boat, but it's best to have the skin on. We can get that nice and crispy. 1 onion, chopped. 2 carrots, chopped. 1 stalk of celery, chopped. 2 cloves of garlic, minced. And for the sauce, we're going to use 1 can of chopped tomatoes, chicken stock, white wine, and for our spices, salt, pepper, bay leaf, and rosemary. And on the side, we'll serve with egg noodles. The chicken is on a paper towel to help dry the outside, because moisture is the enemy of getting a nice sear on the chicken, so you want to make sure it's nice and dry before putting it into the pot. Of course, now the bottom side of the chicken is getting dry as it's sitting here on the paper towel, and before I head over, I'm going to take another paper towel and pat down the skin side. So before we head on over to the stove, I'm just going to quickly go over how we're going to make a herb bouquet. Because the rosemary that we have is in a bunch of small pieces, we don't want those floating around in the stew, especially when we're going to serve. So an herb bouquet is basically a small satchel of herbs that you can wrap up and put into a soup or a stew, and then you get the flavor of the herbs without having them floating around. Typically this is made with cheesecloth, but if you don't have cheesecloth, it's too hard to find, etc., etc., you can just sub the cheesecloth for a coffee filter. And to make the herb bouquet is pretty simple. We'll just take our rosemary first, or your bay leaf, it doesn't matter which one you go first, and just put a little bit in, maybe about somewhere between a teaspoon and a tablespoon. Then we'll just add 2 bay leaves, and one's gonna break apart and fall down. I guess we didn't need it anyway. Our 2 bay leaves into a herb bouquet as well. You can also use other herbs too if you want to add in like oregano, parsley, but I'm just going to stick to these 2. Then we're going to fold it over in such a way that we can tie the top as such, and that way the herbs will not fall out. And to ensure that, we'll take a piece of string, cut a good amount, and then we'll just tie across the top. This way, we can keep everything inside and we don't have to worry about it falling out and getting into the stew, which is the thing we're trying to avoid anyway by making this. A simple knot is fine, and you want to make sure to leave extra string on the other side, because that way you can use it to tie onto the handle, and then it makes getting it out at the end a lot more easy. Now that we have everything prepped and set up, let's head on over to the stove to start the cooking. So I've gone ahead and dried off the skin of the chicken, and I put about maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons of oil into our pot. Since we're doing a Dalmatian recipe, I figured it'd be best to go with olive oil in lieu of butter. We're just going to wait for this to get nice and hot, make sure the oil covers the entirety of the bottom of our pot, and then we'll add our chicken in. When we add the chicken, we want to make sure that it has enough room, that it's not touching and it doesn't end up steaming, but we really get that nice sear. Just grab our chicken and make sure to put it in skin side down. Really hear that sear. If it looks like you don't have enough room, maybe give it about 30 seconds to a minute. The chicken will start to shrink as it cooks. When it looks like it's shrunk up enough and we have some room, we'll go ahead and add in our second chicken, and on the other side. Wait maybe about 2 to 3 minutes so the chicken gets nice and golden brown, and then we'll flip over. So chicken will tell you when it is ready to be flipped, as it will pick up easy without sticking. Just go ahead and twist switch over to the other side so we get nice golden brown on the skin. The other one is ready as well, so we'll go ahead and flip it over too, and let the other side brown for another 2 to 3 minutes. So once the chicken is nice and browned on both sides, we'll go ahead and remove it to a side plate. All the drippings in. Got one, and our other one. We're not trying to cook the chicken all the way through now, just get it nice and golden brown on the outside, and we'll let it sit on our side plate for a little bit while we go ahead and cook our vegetables. Just turn up the heat a little bit, and we'll take our mirepoix and add everything in. This you want to quickly saute for maybe about 4 to 5 minutes until everything is softened up. And we'll just let this cook down until they get soft, stirring occasionally to prevent anything from burning on the bottom. So once our vegetables have softened, we're going to make a small hole in the center by pushing all the vegetables over to the side. And we're going to go ahead and add our garlic directly into that hole. Try to get all the garlic out. And let the garlic cook for about a minute or until fragrant. Once the garlic has become fragrant, we'll take our glass of white wine and deglaze, making sure to get all the little burnt on parts scraped off and into our sauce. Let the wine boil down and reduce till it's almost gone, and then we'll add in our tomatoes. Before we add in the tomatoes, though, we'll put the chicken back in. So we'll just slide the chicken right in. Make sure we can get all the juices that came out of the chicken as it was resting into the pot. Set over. Make sure the chicken has room to sit. And now we'll go ahead and add in our tomatoes. So I'm just going to take our can, pop the top. We'll go ahead and add the entire can of tomatoes in. This is something about 12 ounces of tomatoes. And now in order to make sure we get everything out, I'll just take some water and pour water into the can. So at the end of the day, we're going to add about a can's worth of water into the paprikash. Set down, swirl around a little bit so we get everything, get all the tomatoes in. You should have enough water so that the chicken is just barely covered. After adding in the water and the tomatoes, I'm going to add in about half my bouillon cube. If you're using chicken stock, you could use chicken stock to clean out the can of tomatoes instead of water. It is at this point now we will season the stew. So we have our herb bouquet. Just going to place it, nestle it right in there, and then I'll tie it along on the pot handle. That way I can easily grab it when it is done, and it's not just going to float away. We'll add our salt, of course, and some pepper next. Remember, try not to over season now at the start because it'll always be easier to add some more seasoning in later than to take it out if you put in too much. Right. Twist on, place back on, and we'll just give a nice stir to get the seasoning throughout. If you wish, you can also add in maybe about a teaspoon or 2 of paprika, although that's going to be more of an inland Croatian dish rather than a coastal dish. We'll just leave this simmer for about 30 minutes. While paprikash is cooking, I've set a pot of water to boil on a separate burner, and this is for the egg noodles. And the idea is to try to time it right so that the egg noodles will be done by the time the paprikash is. My egg noodles take about 7 minutes, but follow the directions on your package of egg noodles. And we'll be back once everything is done and we're ready for plating. So after 30 minutes has passed, go ahead, stick a thermometer into the deepest part of your chicken and ensure that it has reached the proper temperature. Generally that is 165 Fahrenheit. Although, according to the USDA, it can be a little bit lower as long as you hold it at that temperature for a certain amount of time. I'll put a link down in the description to the USDA webpage where you can see what temperature the chicken can be at and how long it has to stay there in order to be safe to eat. However, it's super easy to just get it to 165, and especially since we're using chicken thighs, they can withstand a longer and hotter cook time rather than, say, something like the chicken breast. So here we have our finished paprikaš. Of course, in the typical Croatian fashion, we're going to be a little bit more soupier on the sauce, but of course, feel free to let it reduce a little bit longer if you'd like. Remove the chicken and let it reduce to your desired consistency, or if you'd like, you could sprinkle some flour in there as well to really help thicken it up, but I like it just the way it is. I'm going to go in quick and just take a little taste for seasoning. Okay, that needs a little bit more salt. And so, like I was saying when we were doing the seasoning, it's always easier to add stuff into the pot at the end rather than take it out. So it's better to go a little bit lighter on the seasoning in the beginning, because you can always add salt into your pot at the end, but if you end up adding in too much salt, you're kind of screwed. Let's just give it another taste. It's only me here, so I can use the same spoon. Okay, that is much better. So now that we have corrected our seasoning, let's go ahead and remove the herb bouquet. Since we tied it onto the handle, it's super easy to just pull out. We'll let it drip out all the juices in there, add some more flavor. And now we'll go ahead and serve. First, what I'll do is take our egg noodles and just put maybe about half of this in here. I let it sit a little bit while and it got sticky, but it's fine. Plate the bottom with egg noodles, and then we'll go ahead and grab our ladle, and we'll go and take one of our chicken thighs and legs. Ooh. And on top, and of course, let's get some of that sauce with the vegetables in it and the tomatoes and everything. Sorry. Get it all over. I've also gone ahead and poured myself a glass of wine to enjoy the paprikaš, the same wine that I cooked with. If it's good enough to drink, it's good enough to cook with, as Julia Child once famously said. But now we have everything nice and plated, so let's go ahead and give it a taste for Greg. Let's get in right in there in the middle. Get some of the thigh. Get a lot of sauce in there too, and some egg noodle as well. And let's just blow on it so I don't burn the roof of my mouth like I did the last time. That is so good. It reminds me just of home, the same way that my mom would make it. The chicken is perfectly tender and still juicy. And all the flavors from the vegetables and the tomatoes in the sauce pair perfectly with their chicken. And then the egg noodles just add a nice little starch there as well. And honestly, if you had some cheese, I would go ahead and put some on here as well. It can only increase the tastiness of this dish. There we have it. Pileći paprikaš. Dobar tek. Looks hot enough, so we'll just grab our first chicken. Make sure we go skin.